criminals expect places like schools and churches to be unarmed. So they're safe havens for them to go in and kill people and create carnage if that's what they want to do. So again, you don't have to have everybody pack a gun to go to church, but if criminals know that a particular church has some people that carry firearms that attend that church, they're not going to go to that church. And that's what happened in South Africa, is they made the mistake of showing up at a church where there were some guns, and there were tragically a few people that were still killed, but it was much less of a tragedy than it would have been had there been no guns in that congregation.
A lot more people would have gotten hurt if there would have been nobody. They might have killed everybody in that church. But because one man turned on them with a gun, they fled.
For example, the Korean shop owners that I mentioned, they needed the assault rifles that are very visible and very powerful because they had to protect their storefronts during riots, and they were able to do so for days. They were assisting the police in doing that, and the police could not have defended many of those blocks if those shop owners hadn't done that. So that's an area where you see the need for even the big ugly guns. When it comes to the little inexpensive guns, they point to accidents and all these sort of things. But I remember the lady here in Sacramento years ago, 84 years of age, I believe. She was in a wheelchair, living alone. And two hoodlums broke into her home to rob her. She had the presence of mind to have one of them wheel her over to a little table she had in the living room, telling them that that's where her jewelry was. But it was actually her husband's old World War II revolver that was still loaded. And she managed to pull that gun out, shoot the fellow that was pushing behind her wheelchair, and wounded the other one as he fled. So here's a case where, she wasn't storing it properly. It was old. It was probably rusted. It was loaded. All the things the gun control crowd would say she was doing wrong, in fact, saved her life.
If criminals thought in their mind that everybody has a gun, they wouldn't risk getting shot unless they just don't care about their life, which I'm sure there's a smattering of those out there. But you got to remember that the police take a long time to get to your house, and by the time they get there, everybody's dead.
You control people with guns who don't have guns. If you have a gun, you have a match for the person who has a gun. If you don't have guns to match each other, it's just like fist to fist. You can fight with somebody, but you don't have a choice if the other guy has control already. That's the reason criminals get by with everything. When they have somebody under control that don't have any weapons. They go in and rob your store, you don't have nothing to protect yourself.
Well, you just show them how many people's lives are saved every year by well-trained, good citizens. There's something to the effect of 2.5 million people a year protect themselves in this country with guns. But of course the media doesn't tell you that. But, way more people are saved than are killed by guns. But the media doesn't tell you that because they're in the tank with the anti-gun lobby. Every well-trained good citizen should have guns and be able to carry them on them wherever they want. Because those are the people who end up saving lives and protecting other people and themselves. You just cannot count on... You don't want a cop on every corner. You just don't want that. Then we live in a police state. That's ridiculous. Then the government is to be feared. That's like the Soviet Union. And that's the last thing we want here in the land of the free.
A woman who finds herself alone a lot may want to have a small handgun if she's properly trained at home. Because, again, when you call 911, all the police are going to do is show up and write the police report. They're not going to be there when the man is trying to break into your home.
Well, they want to control guns because then they can control people, see. Ultimately, that's the bottom line. If they can take guns away, then they can, it was Hitler who started gun control. And we see what happened when he took the guns away, right? Millions of people died. That's what gun control is about. It's all about control. It's about the government controlling your life. You see, the intention of the founders of this country was that the government would fear the people. There was never supposed to be this gigantic standing army in this country. The people were supposed to be the standing army, and that the government was supposed to fear the people. But now it's the other way around, which is why I even have to do this interview with you anonymously, right, and hidden. Because if the government gets a hold of this, then you'll be put on a list as some kind of anti-government, white supremacist, cult leader or something like that, just because you believe in the Second Amendment, which is the Constitution of the United States, which is what all these people take an oath to uphold and protect, right? They have no intention of protecting and upholding it anymore. They want to rule over the people. This has been going on for thousands of years, So guns are an obstacle to their ultimate tyrannical control of humanity. Guns are about freedom. That's why we need guns.
It's probably one of the most misunderstood things in the Christian faith today. We have, by default, become pacifist. The turn the other cheek and love your enemies have become the only things that Jesus said. And we've ignored history where the Christian church has given us the just war doctrine that helps us to understand what it means to defend a country and when it's time to go to war. We've forgotten the admonition that Jesus gave his disciples that they were, when he sent them out to take dominion and to build the church, they were to have coats and bags and swords. They were not to be carpets to be walked on. We do things differently as Christians. We do things justly. We would never, Lord willing, abuse the power that God grants us, but we are to use that power, whether it's at the civil magistrate level or the individual family that protects their home.
Well, they wouldn't be living in this country. This country wouldn't even exist if Christians didn't carry guns to church, because it was the Christians that came out of the churches with their guns that fought at Lexington and Concord, that started the war for independence.
We have tended in America as Christians to become very pacifistic. There's large numbers of Christians that struggle with the death penalty. There's large numbers of Christians that struggle with whether or not we should be armed. Aren't we supposed to turn the other cheek? And we need to make sure that we understand all that the Bible says. We are not to take personal vengeance. If you come up and try to pick a fight with me, I'm not to prove that I'm tougher than you by fighting back and getting in a big old brawl in the playground. That's what the turning the other cheek means. But if you grow up to become a burglar that invades my home and wants to steal my property or threaten the lives of my wife and children, then Jesus expected me to care for my family, and that can include being armed enough to be able to deal with a criminal. It also means that we should have a criminal justice system that is not afraid to use the ultimate punishment of death for those that commit crimes like murder. So, these are voices that need to come from the church today. This is what it means to be salt and light, is to encourage individuals to be responsible for protecting their families and to encourage the civil magistrate to do its job. It was given the sword to be a terror to evildoers, and we as Christians have to be the ones that remind people of this over and over.
They have their choice. You don't have to have guns, but if you want to stand the fear with what's coming at you, because you can't argue with a gun.